Hey guys, welcome back. So today we shall be talking about the Russia-Ukraine war. This will be a little update on basically just like Bakhmut and my opinions on what's going on there. We'll talk about the Ukrainian counteroffensive, where I think that's going to come from. And then finally we shall be talking about the T14 tank being in Ukraine. So then, if you guys find yourselves enjoying the video, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and I want to get my views spread and like have my opinions seen with this thing. So it really helps if you guys subscribe and all that. Anyway, so let's get into it. Basically, Bakhmut is the biggest shit show I've ever seen. You see, this is a conflict area that it was supposed to have been taken over 3 weeks ago. Right, that's when they're saying Bakhmut's about to fall. Bakhmut still isn't about to fall. And quite frankly, it's just a meat grinder, and it really makes no sense for Russia to continue forcing or trying to capture the city. Like, there's just so much wrong with this entire idea and doctrine when people try and tell me that, oh, but we need to take Bakhmut, because there's nothing there. There's no valuable resources that you can't access anywhere else. There's no strategic advantage to Bakhmut. And the reality is, several kilometers away, there's an even bigger city on top of a hill, which is more heavily defended and better armed. And this is the big thing you gotta understand, right? Like, Russia's just throwing soldiers after soldier into this battle, and it is quite simply brutal and completely ridiculous, in my personal opinion. I think it's pretty horrible that people are just getting thrown away like this, and they just send them in with no real equipment or anything to take the city. In fact, there's been issues with the people not having 155mm artillery shells, meaning that they can't fire and help out their own soldiers. So that's great. And other issues will just continue becoming more and more prevalent and more exposed. But the thing is, what is making Russia go for this? Well, my opinion is this. I think it's their final hope. Okay? Basically since this whole war started, Russia's gains initially were pretty crazy. Like, when they were saying they could have taken Kyiv in 3 days, if their military was competent, I wouldn't doubt that. They had the military assets and the soldiers to do it. The problem is they lacked the training and the finesse, or the actual stuff on their vehicles, such as tires. Did you actually, just quickly, fun fact? Did you know you need a tire to drive your car? Because I didn't. Maybe that's why the Russians should stop listening to me for military advice. Just some thoughts. The reality is that, though, at the end of the day, Bakhmut's sort of, I think it's a symbol of this entire war, right? It's a complete and utter shit show. People are just getting their lives thrown away for the most useless gain in a pointless offensive that makes zero sense. Bakhmut really is, at this point in time, it's a propaganda victory. Russia's trying to take it, and they're throwing so much stuff into there because they want to prove that they're able to actually do something. And they're not just spending the entire war losing. That's my personal opinion on it. I've also seen some conspiracy theories that it's an idea to try and weaken or destroy the Wagner group, which actually makes sense now, looking at a lot of this stuff and knowing how annoyed they are with Putin. I actually can kind of understand where they're coming from with that. But yeah. Then we now come to the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Honestly, there's been some speculation where this will come from, okay, and what it will include. So I personally think it will include some of the Western tanks, and yeah, I think it will come from the north, okay? Basically, it's the most illogical position, with these recent little gains in the south where people have actually crossed the river and all that stuff. I would be tempted to say it could be a southern offensive, but it's just illogical. Let me explain. Russia has the vehicles and the assets to get across. They got fully amphibious APCs. They got actual ships that they can use and large boats that they can get across the river. They have the ability to do so. Ukraine, on the other hand, doesn't have much of this. Yeah, they got a few light attack boats and all that sort of stuff, but they really don't have a large number of heavy vessels. They don't really have the large number of vessels to get them across. And the other big thing to understand is that this river is covered with like a little archipelago of islands. Each of these islands they're not something that I'd want to be caught napping on, but the truth is, like, there is enough cover through trees and that you could set up a couple of soldiers there with rocket launchers to try and target the enemies as they come through. The issue is down here is that the losses will be catastrophic just getting across. It makes no sense. Why lose soldiers trying to cross a body of water when the opponents can't cross either? That's the big thing to understand. Russia is in a stalemate down there. They're forced to stalemate. And whilst that's kind of good for Russia, it's actually even better for Ukraine. This means that they don't need to particularly worry so much about having to set up all these defences, but they can actually worry about reallocating their troops for up north. And this is likely where the main offensive is going to come from. Up north, there are many vital supply routes and all that lead into places like Crimea and actually from Russia. If these supply routes could be cut off, there would be huge amounts of chaos and damage done to the Russian military. So I personally believe it would be most logical that they'd actually go for these specific supply routes rather than actually doing anything else. Of course, I could be completely wrong. They could launch it from the south, provided if the west gives them the equipment. But I genuinely doubt that it will come from anywhere else. Sorry, my throat's started to go. Then of course I'd also reckon we'll be waiting a bit though before we actually see the offensive. I think they'd be wanting to wait until they got some more Abrams and Leopard tanks before they actually start doing the offensive. I think it will occur sometime soon, like in the next couple of months, but I wouldn't be saying it will be occurring in the next week or so. I could be proven wrong, and I'm happy to be proven wrong if this matters, but the thing is, I don't think it's going to be in the next couple of weeks. Now, of course, we come to the T14 being deployed in Ukraine. This is the actual first war that the T14 is supposedly going to be deployed in active combat. Despite the claims that the T14 was deployed in Syria, and whilst these claims are accurate, they are misleading. The T14, whilst deployed in Syria, never actually saw any conflict. It just sat around and looked pretty, and maybe a photo op or two for the propagandists, but there was never actually documented in combat. So there are some little problems, aren't there? Realistically, I would argue that the T14's use will be very limited. Like, first off, there's just not enough of them. The T14 just doesn't exist in high enough numbers, and this is one of the biggest problems for it. Is that no matter how good it is, or how good the Russians say it is, the truth is, there's only 50 in existence. So that's not going to pull off enough. That's not going to be enough vehicles, and there's just not going to be enough of them to actually cause the damage that it was required for Russia to take over Ukrainian territory or force Ukraine back. Another very big point I'd like to make about the T14 is that this is actually a very, very high-risk maneuver. Because what this actually does is it puts the T14 now straight into the firing lines. Ukraine has already captured T90s. And not the basic export models, but the but the fancy new Russian versions. These tanks were actually dubbed as invincible and undestroyable by some Russian units, and were quickly proven otherwise, with several being captured and sent straight off to Western countries. So now we know what they look like. This is the big issue for Russia with the T14. The problem is, if we capture a single one of them, it'll either prove that the West is behind, or that Russia is much, much further behind us. And this is the whole issue that faces Russia for the T14. Is that it's a really high-risk maneuver. I believe it was deployed because it's simply just in response that, if the T14 is so good, then why aren't you deploying? I'd also make it clear that I don't think the people will actually know properly how to use it, and will be trying to use it as either an MBT or a glorified howitzer. And this is actually one of the biggest problems that I think we'll see with the T14. It's that they won't actually be using it in front of conflict, but actually at the back as an artillery gun. This actually makes more sense given the fact that it has the ability to supposedly get rid of hostile missiles that are fired at it and destroy various weapon systems that are launched. However, I do not believe it has the ability to withstand a full-on artillery barrage. So yeah. Ultimately though, this video I think's just supposed to prove that like Russia doesn't have this ability. And quite frankly, I'm just kind of tired of this entire discussion that Russia's so strong and they're so much better. And this war, I think, is just genuinely, it's horrible for Russia. Right? That's me being real. This war is catastrophically bad for Russia. And it's not just, you know, militarily, it's not just the loss. It's the exposure of the horrible morals and the vulgarity of the Russian population. You know, like, I remember coming across many Russian people who try and tell me that they're morally superior. And it's like, oh, well, we're not trying to force certain ideology upon children in schools. And then you got worse shit going on, you know? With even one case where a girl literally drew a picture of a Russian flag saying no to war and Ukrainian cities being destroyed, and her dad got arrested, thrown into jail, and this little girl is now is being forcibly indoctrinated by the state. Like, I genuinely cannot understand what sort of bullshit we live in, where this is acceptable. And this is the thing, I think this entire conflict just shows how vulgar and horrible the Russian society is as a whole. There's no morals, there is no standard, and quite frankly, it's horrific. You got people that, I genuinely am not joking, I have come across women who are pro-Russian, who are Russian, telling me that rape is okay because, well, it's against the Ukrainians, so, and Zelensky and his mob. Like, when is that an argument? When is that a discussion that any human being puts forwards? And this is why I need to say it, right? This is why Russia is losing this war. It's because, 1, they are proving that they cannot even take on a country a quarter of their size, despite being the most powerful country in the world. 2, they've been pushed back repeatedly. 3, they have united the world against them. And they're alienating themselves. And that's the reality of this war, right? It's alienation and destruction. Russia has destroyed its standing in the world. It's destroying whatever honor or whatever respect we had for it. You know, we used to look at Russia as this powerful country that would sweep through, and all these pro-commie guys are like, oh yes, and then when we revolt, you pay for your capitalist crimes. Now, people try and stick up for Russia, going, oh yeah, when that happens, you got so many people that used to be pro-Russian, they're just sitting here like, no thanks. I think I'll pass on that one. Because this is the reality of Russia. It's a violent, vulgar country that has no respect for human life, has no standard of respect. The politicians can't be persuaded to pull out or stop fighting. There's none of that. And this is what I have to say quite simply. I'm done with this entire BS to do with Russia, right? You're either for war crimes or you're against war crimes. Like, that's how I stand on shit, right? You know, I'm happy to call out Russian war crimes, and I'm happy to call out Western war crimes. Point me towards Western war crimes, and I'll be happy to call them out. You know, show footage of them occurring, show me damning proof that it's occurred, and I'll be happy to call them out. Because here in Australia, we take war crimes very seriously. You know, a literal report that had no legal binding ruined people's lives, despite the fact that it proved absolutely nothing. We take war crimes seriously here. And I'm just sick of this whole bullshit with this whole Russian argument. It's like, oh yeah, but you committed war crimes. Like, can I just ask you what your standard is? Like, but by your standard then, I guess, because rapists exist, it must be okay for me to rape. Or because Jeffrey Epstein trafficked children around the world, it must be okay for me to do the same, right? No, it's not. And you're insane if you think so. And this is why I just have to wrap this up and just say, I'm kind of done with a lot of this whole Russian discussion. Like, it is truly a toxic place. It is truly a horrible place to be. And, you know, long live Ukraine. Like, honestly. And also to our governments, can you guys please actually step up sending over equipment? Like, give them more tanks and more stuff. Like, I obviously get the logistical issues with F-16s and modern gen fighters, but we need to step up sending the stuff over. our stuff over and step up giving them equipment. Because if we don't, Ukraine's going to suffer a lot more. But yeah, that's it for now. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. Really helps the channel. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you very much. Bye.